Okay, so our first presentation is on introduction. We're going to introduce ourselves to IT governance. We've talked about IT infrastructure, which was just limited to infrastructure. Now we're going to be talking of governance. So IT governance, of course, is a broader concept as compared to IT infrastructure. So when we talk of IT governance, for this presentation, we have a lot to cover. The objectives we've set for ourselves. I was trying to join. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. So these are the objectives we set for ourselves this morning. So we have. Hold on. I'm getting some feedback. So join with. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So these are the objectives we set for ourselves this morning. First of all, we are coming to define and explain the concept of IT governance. Then we have what we call the domains. So IT governance has been categorized in some domains. And then we have components, and then we have importance. Now, we should always take note of these terminologies. Let me turn off this. Yeah. Now, these terminologies, sometimes people confuse them. So we take them one after the other. First of all, we talk about domains of IT governance. Then we talk of components. Then we talk of some important factors or issues when it comes to IT governance. So sometimes when in an exam, people mix them up. I say, discuss any 4 components of IT governance. Then people will start talking about the domains. Or when you say, explain why IT governance is important using some examples or whatever. And people would be talking about. So you need to take care of these. You need to take note of these terminologies. When we're talking of domains, you need to know what we're talking about. And when we're talking of components, of course, we know what component means. That is what goes into IT governance. Domains is more like the areas, or most likely the areas that IT governance cover. And so these terminologies, we need to take them and bear them in mind. Then we're going to look at IT governance in relation to other forms of governance. We also have enterprise governance. We have corporate governance, but we even have data governance and so on. And so look at where IT governance, sits in relation to these ones. And then we have what we call best practices when it comes to implementing IT governance. And so this is what we'll be covering this morning for about the next hour or so. So we get started with what IT governance is. Now, first of all, why is it even an issue that we should be talking about IT governance? Now, the brief background, of course, we all know IT has become ubiquitous in almost every sector worldwide, what we were talking about last week. Wherever you go, now there is IT. You can't function in any industry or any field without IT resources. You can't, because everywhere, even archaeology, philosophy, whatever, you will see a whole lot of computing and applications being used. And so IT is now everywhere. So it plays a pivotal role in achieving success and maintaining competitive advantage. We know that. But mostly, the very critical thing is, it's not just the question of having IT systems or resources. Having the latest, it's just not enough. People are carrying around iPhone 15 or whatever it is, the latest iPhone. And all they use it for is what? Maybe receiving calls and then WhatsApp. That's all 99% of the time. That's what they use the phone for. And so in that case, even an iPhone 6 or iPhone 7, I don't know which one is which, would have done the same thing. So what's the point going for spending a whole lot of money to get the latest gadgets only to be using it barely. And that's because your focus is not really something that is uh, worthwhile or whatever, because maybe you just want to have it to show off, and that doesn't even contribute in a way to you achieving anything. If you buy a phone just to show off, rather than using it for some significant purposes, then you are really not making any good use of it. You're wasting money. So the issue of IT governance. So when we're saying that to conquer the digital rapids, this is just a terminology for trying to explain how the current situation with regard to technology is very, when we talk about rapids, tumultuous here and there. We need a clear roadmap for managing IT infrastructure and systems. So organizations need to be very clear and focused as to how we are going to manage these resources that we are acquiring. People just ask for computers. The fact that you have been employed, you are asking for computers. It doesn't matter whatever work you are doing. Most people are looking for computers in their offices. Then you ask them, what are you going to use it for? Some time back, I always give this example of, people have computers. The only time they actually use it is when they pay salaries and they want to look at their salary or whatever, the salary advice or whatever. That's the time they open it, and then not open it. That's the time they actually use it for something worthwhile. The rest of the time, they're either playing games or watching videos. And so for the whole month, they have computers, but they're only watching videos. They only use it when they are interested in seeing their salary. And that doesn't that when it comes to IT governance, that is not acceptable. Because as we'll be discussing in detail, the IT systems should be aligned with your organizational goals and objectives. And so based on this background, IT governance now comes in because we want to ensure that when we're acquiring these resources, and IT is very expensive. When you are buying these things, they are very expensive, expensive to maintain. And so you can't buy them and then misuse them or use them for other purposes that are not contributing to your organizational goals. And we'll come to talk about some historical perspectives shortly, but we first of all define what it is. So when you're asked, what is IT governance? Now, what do we say? Now, there's this graphic I just picked from the internet. It says if you ask 10 people what IT process governance is or IT governance, you will likely get 11 different answers. People have different ways of defining IT governance. It's not a straight jacket definition. And that is because it depends on what type of organization you are running, the objectives that you set for yourself, even the environment that you are operating, the laws that are in operation, because some places laws are not strictly enforced. And so when it comes to IT governance, people don't pay much attention to those aspects. Other places, laws are stringently enforced. And you have to ensure that, you always are on top of the game and so on. But there are some definitions that we can look at. Now, if you go to Wikipedia and then you ask, or you just type in IT governance, it will start telling you it's a subset of corporate governance. Of course, we know IT is within the organization. So it's a subset of corporate governance focused on information technology and its performance and risk management. There's one definition. So performance and then managing risk. Of course, it goes beyond that. Then IT Governance Institute, that's based in the UK, also says it's an element of corporate governance, but it's aimed at improving the overall management of IT. Hold on. All right. Yes. So the IT Governance Institute talks about, again, they are saying it's an element of corporate governance aimed at improving overall management of IT, driving improved value from its investment in information and technology and so on. NITA, that's National Information Technology Agency, NITA, yeah. IT governance is part of the wider corporate governance. So of course, they all agree that, when it comes to IT governance, it operates within the overall corporate governance, but with specific focus on IT. It covers culture, organization, policies, and practices that provide oversight and transparency of IT. So this is now, broadening it to include a whole lot of other things. So when we take these definitions, there's no one clear-cut definition that will say is the one that we accept. There are
Prof, you're muted, please.
Yeah, hold on. I'm at home and there's a dog disturbing, so I decided. Yes. All right. So more definitions or further definitions. We'll be talking about ISO and their standards. Is the responsible, so they are saying that IT governance is the responsible, innovative, sustainable, and strategic use of IT, data, and digital capabilities. So organizations can fulfill their purpose in a manner expected by their stakeholders. So they have also broadened it. So you realize that there are so many uh, uh, parameters or areas involved here. Oh, hold on. Why is this dog disturbing? All right. I think I've taken care of that one. So, and then another definition. So this just to show that, when we're asked to define IT, there's no, define IT governance, there's no one straitjacket acceptance of IT governance. Some people talk of performance, others talk of risk, others talk of, culture, some talk of sustainability, some talk of alignment with the business objectives, and so on and so on. So you realize that this one is also saying align IT strategy with business objectives, manage risk, allocate resources, and measure performance. These are mostly the domains of IT that we'll be discussing shortly. So in short, IT governance, okay, at least we all agree that it is an aspect of corporate governance. So the entire corporate, we'll be talking about enterprise governance and then corporate governance and so on. So the entire organization has its governance structures and processes and so on. And then IT governance falls within that. So you cannot have IT governance operating outside your organizational governance processes. So it's all definitions agree that it's an aspect of corporate governance. But another critical thing is that it must be aligned with achieving your organizational objectives. All the other things that you will do to achieve your objectives is now left to whoever is in charge or what your organization does and so on. So we cannot have a straight jacket definition of what IT governance is. So we want it to be aligned with our corporate goals, of course, and operate under the organization. And then we can now be looking at the various things that we can be doing. So governance as well as far as IT is concerned, must always achieve or help achieve organizational goals. So by definition, as we can see, we have several ways of approaching it. But like I said, it is an aspect of corporate governance. And then it involves so many things, processes, procedures, structures that will enable you to contribute towards achieving organizational goals. Of course, focusing on your IT systems and IT infrastructure and so on and so on. So from this definition, we can see that, no, so what does it do? So so IT governance, we say it institutionalizes structures, processes, responsibilities, authorities, accountability framework, and so on. So it puts down a whole lot of things. In fact, sometimes some people even define IT governance as a framework. It's not just necessarily the framework only, but a whole lot of things that are required to ensure strategic and optimal use of information technology to support organizational strategies and goals or objectives and so on. So all the things that you put in place to ensure that your IT systems are operating optimally and then contributing towards organizational goals all come under IT governance. And so planning, the best practices of planning, organizing, acquiring, implementing, delivering, supporting, and monitoring IT performance. We'll be talking about IT performance as well, to ensure that the enterprise's information and related technology support business goals. So in short, what IT governance does is that it ensures that everything that you do are well aligned with your organizational goals and activities. So, and it's obvious because as we keep saying, IT is an expensive endeavor, or IT systems can be very expensive. And look at the rate at which things are changing. You need to be upgrading things as you go along. And so year in, year out, you are spending more and more money. And if you cannot bring in or demonstrate the value that you are actually bringing to the organization, then sometimes it becomes a challenge that we are spending money, but we're not seeing anything. And when that happens, it means your IT governance systems and structures are either very weak or they are not operating optimally. And so you end up with situations that I've just talked about where you buy computers and then receptionists are sitting in the office using them to watch videos, YouTube videos and so on. And whenever the internet is not there, they are the first to complain. There's no internet. There's no internet. When you ask them what they want the internet for, they can't tell you based on their job what they are going to use the internet for. But if it's not there, then there's a complaint. You provide it, and then you are paying for bandwidth. Bandwidth too can be very expensive. You are paying for bandwidth, but at the end of the day, you are not seeing any results from all those investments. And that signifies that IT governance is not being operated optimally. And so as much as possible, we try to understand what goes into IT governance so that at the end of the day, when we are given the responsibility of managing IT systems, we can put all the requisite things in place to ensure that our IT governance activities are actually benefiting the organization. So IT governance ensures that IT initiatives sustain and extend organization-wide objectives. Investments deliver maximum value while minimizing costs. Assets are safeguarded. Performance is measured and reported. Performance is very critical. We're talking about performance in one of our presentations. How do we measure our performance? Because if you don't measure something, how do you improve on it? Or how will you know that you are improving it? And so you need to measure everything that you do. It has to have some indicators or parameters for measuring. And then you must always comply with the legal and regulatory requirements. As I was just saying, sometimes regulations are not well enforced. And so Ghana, we have the Data Protection Act. Data Protection Act, once you sign onto it, in fact, and every organization must sign onto it. Especially an organization that is taking data from the public. So once you are taking people's data, information, some records of their various whatever activities and so on, and you need to protect that data, because when data is breached and somebody's social security numbers, account numbers, and so on are up there for people to see, then you can be taken on. And the Data Protection Act, if somebody actually takes you to court and is able to demonstrate that you are the one who caused a breach in their confidential information, you can be sent to jail, because that's what is in the act. But it is not being well enforced, or it's not even that much enforced. In fact, even the data protection, the act is there, but the structures to enforce it are really not working very well. And so people do things without taking into consideration some of these legal and regulatory issues. But when they start enforcing them, then we realize that you have to sit up and ensure that your IT governance systems are working well. So once you are creating your IT governance mechanisms optimally, then we can see that you are not only ensuring that you are deriving value from your investments, but you are also complying with the various legal and regulatory laws of the country, and even worldwide, globally. Globally these days, somebody can sit somewhere and sue you for damaging their reputation or breaching their confidentiality, and so on and so on. And so IT governance is of critical importance when it comes to organizational operations. So I was talking about some historical perspective. So where is this coming from? Somewhere in the early 2000s, especially in the UK and the US, there were some corporate scandals. Corporate scandals in the sense that, especially some of these fintech financial organizations, Enron and whatnot, some of these energy companies, some of these investment companies, a whole lot of, they went bankrupt. A whole lot of people lost their money because people were investing their money in these organizations. And then they were giving the impression that they were actually making profits and printing out statements for people at the end of the month. They'll tell you your investment, or you got this interest, and so on and so on. But it was all on paper and nothing, meanwhile they were losing a lot. They didn't have the money, but they were claiming that, So when these scandals started coming up, they had to file for bankruptcy. And once the company files for bankruptcy, your money in there, it's very difficult to get your money back, or unless maybe the government decides to do something about it. So when they called most of the CEOs and managers of the organizations to come and testify or account for what happened, most of them couldn't explain, because the systems they were using to manipulate this information, their accounting systems and so on, the managers had no idea what was happening. It was only the technical people, the IT people, who were using the systems. And so the IT people, they only were making sure that the systems were working. The account people and so on were the ones who were manipulating the figures, but the bosses had no idea. The bosses will only go for meeting and call for data. When they bring the data, then they are happy. Meanwhile, it's not the right data. So when the scandals started coming, then they realized that the bosses or the managers, because they had no idea of what was happening with the IT, they couldn't have any oversight because the MD sitting in his office did not have access to anything. Unlike now, such that they have now made it such that the MD can, at the click of a button, see all what is happening, the performances and so on. But before that, they didn't have that. So when all these scandals happened, and then they got to know that, the authorities got to know that the governance of the IT, because the IT systems are those that are being used to, manipulate all this information. And so because of that, then they started introducing a whole lot of frameworks, to guide organizations. And then they had to take all these MDs and the board. In fact, some of them were even in jail anyway. They had to jail a whole lot of them. But now they had to ensure that, moving forward, we have ways of managing the IT resources, to maintain some transparency. So from the operations to whatever, shareholders, everything should be transparent so that I can log in and actually see my performance. I mean, my investment, how it is, or I can request a statement, and then get it. And I'm sure that it is accurate. The data is, you can verify and so on and so on. So because of that, then the whole concept of IT governance started coming in. And before that, we used to have just enterprise governance. So people are looking at the enterprise generally. And then there was IT management or IT infrastructure, of course. IT management is not the same as IT governance. IT management is just ensuring that your IT systems are working. But whether you are complying with regulations or you are measuring performance and other things, those were not being considered. And so we have some frameworks which we will be discussing subsequently. What we call the COBIT, the ITIL, we'll cover these ones. The ISO, International Standard for International Organization for Standards. It's actually, IOS, but they have used the acronym ISO, so it's just always ISO. So they also come up with a whole lot of standards. I think last week we were talking about ISO certified organizations. If you are ISO certified, what it means is that your performance has been evaluated, all your books have been looked at, and then they are sure that you are credible, you are transparent, and so they issue you a certificate to signify that you are ISO certified. And when you get that, of course, it gives you a competitive advantage over others. And so all these are frameworks. CalDAMOA is another framework, mostly implementing the ISO standards. NIST cybersecurity. Also in the UK, there was a serious breach it brought that, I don't know whether that was, can't remember exactly, but a whole lot of them have been happening. Some ransomware and some stealing of data and so on. And so they also came up with the cybersecurity kind of regulations that organizations must abide by. And you must, even in Ghana here, we also have our Cybersecurity Acts, and we are all expected to demonstrate that we are adhering to, because the way things are being integrated now, what's happening is that if there's a vulnerability somewhere, it's likely to affect the entire landscape or the entire IT landscape of the country. Because if we're all running on, let's say, the government platforms, so we have these ministries all running their systems on these platforms. If we don't take time, and then there's a breach, and especially with the banks, most of the time they are the targets, and so they are being hit here and there all the time. And so you have to implement all these cybersecurity things, and all that come under IT governance. And so because of all these issues, because of all these issues, we now have IT governance coming to the forefront. And organizations are supposed to demonstrate, especially when it comes to complying with the legal, regulations and so on and so on. So this is where IT governance is coming from. So long as IT has become very pervasive and is being used everywhere, we must have governance, and we can't just say, okay, there has to be some guide, and that's why we have these frameworks. And so we're discussing what some of these frameworks, what goes into them, what their standards are, and so on and so on. Then we have the domains. So we have domains of IT governance. So when we say the domains, just like I was saying, there are 5 of them. And so these have been set forth by the what to call the ISACA, Information Systems Audit and Control Association. I don't know whether there's a branch in Ghana here. I haven't checked. But this is a UK-based association that is providing standards that are now more or less being used worldwide. Just like we have other institutes and associations that we normally either register and become members and so on and so on. And so they have to ensure some kind of standards and conformity. They have broken down IT governance into 5 main domains. So the first is what called value delivery. We have to deliver value. Then strategic alignments. I've already mentioned some of these already. Resource management, risk management, and performance management. So these are the 5 main domains. We'll be taking these ones one after the other in subsequent presentations where we'll talk about what goes into risk management, what goes into resource management, and so on, and performance management, and all that. But we'll just look briefly at what they mean when we talk of these domains. So when we talk of domains of IT governance, there are just 5 of them, and these are standard accepted worldwide as the domains. We can look at other things, but when we talk of domains of IT governance, these are the 5 things we should look at. The first is the strategic alignment. So when I say strategic alignment, I believe we already know what it means. So you're aligning all your IT with your organizational processes. So a process of synchronizing an organization's IT plans and operations with its overarching business strategies to ensure IT investment support and drive enterprise growth or enterprise objectives. That's what we've already talked about. So you need to ensure that all the IT that you are procuring and you are implementing, everything must be aligned with what your organization is doing or what your objectives are. If you're an educational institution, and then you are procuring IT, what are the things that you should be looking at? Because I wouldn't go and then be buying software for making movies or whatever. These days they have that. Because I don't really see how that aligns with my strategic objective of educating or producing people who can do certain things. And so we don't just buy things because they are there or because others are having them, but we must always look at, we call it the inside out. So you have to look at your systems, your operations, your objectives first. Then you see how the IT can help you to achieve those things. You don't go and buy the things and come and put down. It happens in some organizations. You just get up and then the boss has seen something that they like somewhere, or they go to somebody's office and they see certain things, and then they come back and then they also just go and procure it. CCTV, when CCTV started coming out, some managing director decided that he also wanted to have CCTV in his office. So they spent all this money and did the cabling and the cameras, and then he had a screen on his desk where he could be watching people coming in and going out and so on. And then most of the time he just look at that screen. He's look at who is coming in what is happening in the corridor and so on and so on, and not really focusing on his own job. And this what a real life example that I'm giving. And so sometimes you go into office and you are talking to him, and then once in a while realize his attention shifts to the screen because he's looking at the screen. And when you look at the screen, there are so many interesting things you can be seeing. Because the cameras are 4 or 5 of them, so one is here, one is here. So people coming in, people going out, and so on. And so you can realize that you have just wasted a whole lot of money. What is it what is it helping you to achieve? Because even if you are procuring CCTV, fine, it's a security thing. It shouldn't be on the MD's desk. What are you going to be doing with it? Anyway, but that's just an example. So when it comes to alignment, and as I keep saying, a whole lot of people are guilty of this misalignment. Spending money and buying things. We wouldn't go towards the corruption aspect where people procure things for the purpose of corruption because you get some kickbacks or whatever. And so you work on procuring something, knowing that you are not even going to use it. But at the end of the day, the organization pays for it, and then you get your 10 or 20%. No, those are not even the ones we are talking about. But sometimes people who genuinely feel that, oh, maybe the organization needs this, but you haven't really taken your time to look at where this thing will fit and how will it actually contribute to help me achieve what I want to achieve. So alignment is very, very critical. So your plans and everything must be aligned, your IT plans. So what is the strategic direction for the organization? The IT plans must fit into that. Value proposition. What value is the IT bringing to the organization, to your customers? Because if you take the banks, for example, the banks, most of them, when it came to internet banking, were a bit reluctant or dragging their feet. But then they realized that internet banking, there was a whole lot of value in it because now you get more customers. In fact, you're likely to getting more customers because you're organizing. I mean, you are providing convenience kind of banking. People don't have to come to the banking hall or whatever. And so you are adding a lot more value to your customer experience. And because of that, now when one person starts, all the others also join in because before you realize you are going to lose your customer. And so you must have a value proposition when you are procuring IT systems. And of course, integrating IT into the enterprise operations to foster innovation, improve performance, and so on and so on. So alignment is very critical, strategic alignment. Things must be well aligned. Then, of course, delivering the value. So IT must deliver value, and you must ensure that you do things in such a way that you derive value. And you should be able to demonstrate this kind of value, tangible, measurable business outcomes. How can you, tell that if I go to management and say the bandwidth that we have is not enough, let's double it, okay? And so they agree and you double it. At the end of the year, how are you going to demonstrate the value that it has brought? This increase in bandwidth. So IT governance is, we have to find ways of measuring something and then demonstrating that we're actually getting more value from what the situation was prior to any intervention and so on. And that value is also aligned with your organizational objectives. That's always critical. It's not just a matter of delivering value, but it must be aligned. So you also have to demonstrate, of course, the positive impacts by managing resources effectively, optimizing costs, consistently provided expected benefits from IT projects, and so on and so on. So So you must deliver value. IT governance ensures that all the IT systems that we have must deliver value. If those things are in place, you wouldn't have MDs going to procure things that are not really contributing anything to the organization. But like I said, sometimes some people want to show off. You know, you can show off, that is fine. But at the end of the day, what are you really getting from it? That's why sometimes people look at these big tech, these entrepreneurs who are very wealthy millionaires. You look at them and they appear very simple. Uh, these days, okay, Steve Jobs is no longer there, but all you used to see him in was his jeans and t-shirts, his Mark Zuckerberg and all those guys. They're always, they appear very simple now, but those of us who have nothing, when we get something small, then we go and buy the very expensive things, and buy big chains and put on our necks. Meanwhile, we don't have anything. Those who are millionaires, because they are strategic. Look at what they do that contributes to the development of whatever they are doing, and not just showing off that you have money. There's no point. There's nothing to achieve from that anyway. So anyway, so IT must always deliver value. So this we need to bear in mind. So apart from strategic alignment, we must also deliver value. Then you must manage your resources, resource management, planning, allocating, and optimizing all IT resources. The optimizing especially is the critical one. Just like I said, people buy high-end computers, put on their desk, and all they're doing is typing and printing. You want a laptop, they say, oh, we want Core i7, we want 1 TB of hard disk, one this and that. And then all they are doing is Microsoft Word and then printing. And that's all. They can't even use Excel or whatever. You are not optimizing the use of the resources, because that amount of money could have even bought 2 or 3 devices if you were going to be using it for that purpose only. And so all these things always have to be taken into consideration. So the human beings, the technology, all your assets, you must ensure optimal use. There's a lot of waste in our systems. People waste a lot, especially when it comes to printing and all those other things. And that's because we are not optimizing the use of the resources. We're not managing costs and so on and so on. So resources must be managed optimally. Maximize value from your IT investments while minimizing costs. But you can always, IT can help you minimize costs, just like I mentioned, printing. If you can do away with printing, you save a lot of money on paper and toner by just ensuring that people are using things online rather than always printing, and so on and so on. So we can always find ways of managing our resources more optimally. And then the issue of risk. We need to manage risk. Risk management is a whole subject we'll be covering in these presentations. And so risk management, so we say it's a continuous process of identifying, assessing, responding to, and monitoring potential threats. So when we say we're managing risk, you can't eliminate risk, but you can manage the risk. We'll come to talk about things like risk acceptance, risk avoidance, and so on and so on. Sometimes some people avoid risk. You just decide not to do something. In that case, you avoid it altogether. But if you don't take some amount of risks, then you will never progress as well. Because, so there's always some risk here and there. And so we have to assess all this and find ways of mitigating. So there's risk assessment and risk mitigation. Of course, when it comes to IT, the biggest risk is our cybersecurity issues. So cyber attacks, the big risks. There are some risks that we have what we call risk acceptance. You use pirated software. People use pirated software. That's a risk because they can take you on, but they can send you to court and then charge you and bankrupt your company. But sometimes you feel that, oh, maybe they will not do that. And so you just decide to take that risk. We call that risk acceptance. But if you have a better way of avoiding that kind of risk, then it's always better to do that rather than, risk acceptance and so on. So we'll be talking, like I said, more exhaustively on risk. But managing risks is also an aspect of IT governance. In fact, you have to have a whole lot of policies and then some practices or processes in place that you always have to fall on, especially backups, data backups, or what we call recovery plan. When something happens, how do you recover from your, I'm sure we covered some of this in our IT infrastructure lectures and so on. So risk management is one big domain of IT governance. And then the last one is the performance. So we looked at resource management, but now also performance management. So you have to make sure that you are monitoring your performance and always seeking to improve on what you are doing, because there's always room for improvement. There's no 100% perfect system in this world. So there's always room for improvement. So, and of course, if you are in a competitive environment too, and you are not improving, you are going to be, left behind or become bankrupt. We can clearly see what is happening in the telcos right now, because apart from MTN and Telecel, Airtel Tigo or AT, you see that it's in trouble right now. They are heavily indebted, and then government has shares in it. They don't know what to do, and so on and so on. And that's because there was no demonstration of continuous improvement. Because all the others, we used to have what Glow, I don't know that they're still there, and Espresso, and those ones. People will subscribe, but they want to see improvement. If I want to make a call and it's not going through, and then I go to another network and it's going through, it's obvious. It's obvious where my attention will be. And so you are not, and you cannot, like I said, you cannot improve if you are not measuring your performance, or if you feel like you are satisfied with what you have, then you are going to stay there and you'll be overtaken by others who are improving. So you always have to have KPIs, performance indicators, that help you measure how you are performing. And like I said, performance is another presentation that we'll be doing, performance measurements. So when it comes to IT, we already know the kind of things we'll be measuring. Even your system performance, downtime. Downtime, like we said, sometimes you get to some places and they tell you that, even in the banks, a bank will tell you our system is down. So wait. And you don't know how long you're going to wait. So for a whole year, if you can tell how many hours was your system down, then you can start thinking of how to improve it. Then the subsequent year, you measure and see whether you're making any improvements. But if you don't measure, then of course, you can't even tell whether you are doing better or not. Sometimes people only look at profits, how much money is coming in, but that is not enough. There are always a whole lot of other things that we can use to measure performance. So those are the 5 main domains. So what we're saying is that if you incorporate these 5 domains into your governance strategy, it helps ensure that your resources are leveraged effectively, aligned with strategic objectives. We can emphasize on this more. And then manage risks while delivering value. So when you incorporate these domains, you're most likely to be more competitive, or more innovative, and always improve on your performance, and so on and so on. and especially in the digital age where things are changing rapidly. IT governance is very, very critical. And so these domains are the general things that, no, you don't necessarily have to implement all of them. Just like I said, that's why the definitions vary. It always depends on your organization. If I have a simple company with few employees, probably I don't need to involve everything that IT governance is prescribing. But at least the minimum, I have to make sure that my IT resources are aligned or are used optimally, and then they are aligned with your organizational goals. The next one is the components. Nobody is interrupting me, so I'm going on. So what goes into IT governance? So when I talk of components, the kind of things that go into, not what it does, but the kind of things that go into IT governance. So it's predominantly about making decisions around IT. Okay, so when we talk of decision making, who are those who will be involved? And what are the tools that they will use? These are the components of IT governance. So we have frameworks, and we have other things that we'll be talking about subsequently. So the day-to-day operations involves human beings. It involves processes, and also involves the technologies. And so now we are beginning to look at who or what is involved in all this IT governance that we are talking about. Of course, the center is always the human beings, and then the technologies, and then the processes. I always try to emphasize on processes. If your processes are cumbersome, you are not likely going to be achieving your objectives. Your process, in the sense that people align processes with your process, because sometimes there are situations where some processes, especially if you are not looking at things organization-wide, and that's why we're saying that IT must be aligned with your organizational processes. Because if you go to finance, for example, and you need money, now, how are their processes? And IT, what can you do to ensure that their processes are aligned with what yours is, or your IT? Because if I have some work to do, relating to IT, situations like a whole server can go down. So if a server crashes, what it means is that most likely there will be no internet in the whole organization. Now, what is the IT process about that? Are you going to procure standby, or what? Yes. No. So when it crashes, you can easily just replace it. In which case you just continue your operations, but that requires money. And so you go to finance, the finance will say, no, we don't buy things like that. You have to have a budget, and so we can't have, well, they are expensive anyway. So now when that happens, then you are going to have a challenge, because when the server crashes, then you are stranded, and finance now has to go through their processes and then try to either get money or whatever. But if there's a way of aligning the things such that that this is very critical, and so we can't afford to have it go down, then obviously the case will be made that this is how it should be. So when it go, of course, machines break down anyway. So when it breaks down, you should have a replacement immediately. Else, your organizational goals are going to be affected. Or your object, assuming that you are going to have a critical meeting, or you are supposed to provide some documentation that's supposed to analyze some data for some decision making, and then your systems go down, it's really going to affect your enterprise greatly. Probably it might even be about trying to get money from a bank or something, and then at the time that you are going to have the meeting, the things go down, and then you are left stranded. Things don't work out, and that's because things are not operating optimally. So IT governance is always to ensure that we have We identify all these things, and then the day-to-day operations, we ensure that they are not significantly affected or adversely affected one way or the other. And so the components that, when we talk of components, we have what we call the framework. First of all, we have what we call the charter. And then, of course, there are always committees that handle certain things. Then internal controls, and then the important ones, the policies and the procedures. Policies. Most of the times, people operate without policies. So they'll ask you, what is your policy on this? And then you don't have an answer. For IT governance, in fact, it's always mostly one of the starting points. What's your policy for the use of something? Email, an organizational email. What is the policy? Desktop computers, laptop computers. If there are laboratories in schools, for example, the computer lab, what is the policy for using these ones? And so on and so on. Cyber security aspects, antiviruses, and so on and so on. So all these are, and then, like I said, data recovery, backup and recovery. All these are policies that have to be documented and be put into operation. And so for effective IT governance, these must all be in place. But so most of these things require developing something, documentation, and then trying to put them and try to operationalize all of them. And all employees involved must be educated or must be trained to be using these things optimally, applying the policies and so on and so on. Most of the time we do things without recourse to these things, but for organizations that are really focused on improvement and maintaining competitive advantage and so on and so on, you must abide by most of or you must implement optimal IT governance processes. So we will take these ones one by one. A framework, there are the general frameworks that we're looking at, but there's mostly what we call a charter. A charter is more or less the document that officially or that legally establishes all the things that you are doing. So they'll ask for your IT governance charter, where is the document that gives you the legal mandate to be doing some of these things that you are talking about doing. And so these are so that you must always develop a charter. I'm sure if you go around most organizations, they don't have it. But of course, the very the Googles and then the Facebooks and all those ones, you can even try to search for it more online. You probably get their IT governance charter where they have all the legal backing and all the language is written and all those ones, the structure, the rules and responsibilities and everything. And that becomes your IT, the governance charter. So it outlines the purpose, the scope of IT governance, the composition and responsibilities of the committees, the processes for decision-making, resource allocation, performance measurements. So sometimes it can be a big document that outlines all these things, the IT governance charter. And then we have the committees. Most things work with committees. So decisions relating to IT are made at various committees. It's up to you what type of committees that you would form. So you can have either a management committee or an operations or whatever. But all these are under government. Of course, it always depends on, I have a graphic here that tries to list some of these ones. So you can have steering committee, advisory groups, and so on, executive council. And all these are structures established by the IT governance charter. And so you have a whole lot of committees. Sometimes you might need only one. And most institutions, it's always maybe one or two. So it might involve the top people, or sometimes not, but you need committees, steering committees, or decision-making committees, and so on. So all these day to day, they have to ensure that ITs are aligned with business objectives. It appears everywhere we go. At the end of the day, we are always mentioning this thing. We must align our IT with business objectives. Of course, we can't forget about the regulations and then abiding by the laws and all those other things. But the first and foremost is always your, and of course, one of your, whatever business you have must first of all be operating legally and must be obeying the laws, paying the taxes, and doing all those ones. Because, I mean, if you don't do that and then you are found wanting, then the whole organization collapses. And so you can't say I'm focused on just my goals, but no, I wouldn't focus on these ones, because when they come to you because you have not paid taxes, and then your organization can collapse, or you have breached some people's confidential information, and so on and so on. So committees, one of the components. I have some examples here. I don't need to go into this because these vary depending on what your organization is. But you can look at always the board, steering committee. Some have a program office, architecture review board, technology council, and so on and so on. And they have their, sorry, let me get some water. Okay, so we have, these are not something you can recommend for any organization. It's always up to the management to decide. But at least there must be a governing board of some sort that has oversight over all IT governance systems. Let me get some water before I... So the third one is the internal control framework. So internal control simply talks about the kind of things you do on a day-to-day basis, that guides your operations. So a structured approach that uses established guidelines to ensure IT operations align with business objectives. We keep saying this over and over again. So by implementing such framework, organizations can establish policies, procedures for managing risk, optimizing resource use, ensuring compliance, and so on and so on. So these are the kind of things that go into the IT governance, or when we talk of the components of the IT governance. And then the policies, again, we are mentioning the policies here. There are always some standards that we should be looking at, standards that we have to be guided by, our procedures, and then plans for the future, or roadmap for the future. And so these are also things that go into IT governance. In fact, the critical one, as I keep saying, are the policies. You must have policy. Now, standards, of course, are mandatory rules that define the minimum acceptable requirements for IT systems, the security, the operations, and so on, to ensure consistency. So on top of standards, we always say whether your operations are meeting standards. Are they meeting any standards? So we have all this as part of our components of IT governance. All these are English words anyway. There are no technical jargon or whatever. And then the final one is our day-to-day operations. So at the end of the day, what people do on a daily basis is what governance is all about anyway. So people come in, what are they doing? The day-to-day operations. In fact, you also need policies to guide all these things. And so monitoring performance, reviewing your policies, managing risk, ensuring regulatory compliance, handling auditors and regulators is also a critical one. We have IT auditors. So auditors can come and go through your IT systems, especially so in an organization like ours, GCTU, where you are taking money from the public, and you are a government organization. That money belongs to the government. So the system they are using to take the money has to pass some stringent kind of audits, because you can't have a system that will be giving wrong figures or making wrong calculations. And so auditors are always checking to see whether we are really doing the right thing, because some organizations, especially who handle millions of customers, there was one story in the US where a bank, over 10 million customers, and somebody wrote some kind of code. One of the IT people wrote some kind of code that was deducting 1 cent from every transaction. So when you come and withdraw, and not money that is whole, but if it's some money, if you are giving a check, of maybe 100 cedis and then 25 pesos or something, the system will give you 100 cedis and 24 pesos to deduct 1 cent. And all those deductions were being, transferred onto another account. It was running automatically. And so 1 cent, so people, I mean, most people don't even take time to check, or you won't even notice it. Until some very critical people started observing that it looks like there's something wrong here. So when they finally checked, they realized that every transaction that was made, 1 cent was deducted, and the man was making millions, because you are talking of millions of transactions every day. And so right, if not for very meticulous customers, nobody would have known, because at the end of the day, when they are doing the calculation and other things, those ones are normally just considered, what, I don't know, but that's how the person was getting away with it. And by the time they caught him, he had made some millions. Anyway, he had to pay back everything anyway. So at least your systems must pass the requisite auditing standards, and so on and so on. The last but one, we're going to talk about the importance of IT governance. We've already covered some of this here. Hold on. All right. So the last but one, I talk of importance. We've already mentioned these ones anyway. So the importance of IT governance. So why do we need IT governance? So far, all along, what we have been talking is very obvious. So alignment with business goals. I don't need to talk about this anymore, because we have flogged this over and over again. All right. So alignment with business goals, as I said, we have talked a whole lot about this. Risk mitigation. We've already talked about risk. So mitigate risks. It's not about, you cannot eliminate risks altogether. You only find ways of minimizing its impact on your activities. but it's a proactive process. So you must always be on the lookout or on your toes, putting certain things in place to ensure that you are able to manage risks. So in case something happens, you can recover. So we talk of risk mitigation. Then the resource optimization, we already talked about. It helps you to optimize the use of your resources, because once you implement some of those domains or all of them, then these are things that will be the outcome. So you can always optimize your resources. There are a whole lot of benefits when you are able to optimize your resources, saving costs, improving efficiency, and so on and so on. Timely project completion, that's also one critical thing. If projects suffer overruns, either budget or time, and so on, then you are likely to suffer some reputational damage, especially if you are delivering something for customers and you are always asking for extension because you have not been able to deliver on time because your governance mechanisms are not working well, and so things are not going according to plan. Then you suffer reputational damage. That the organization can be stakeholders can start losing your confidence in your organization and so on. So resource optimization, transparency or transparent decision making. So IT governance ensures that you are transparent in all what you are doing. And so you make decisions, informed decisions that are fair and ethical and align with your strategic goals. Of course, ethics is also an issue that must also be taken into consideration when it comes to IT governance. Ethics in the sense that you don't want to be, evading people's privacy and so on and so on. So we have issues on ethics. Transparency, performance measurement, and improvement. We already talked about this. So in our subsequent lectures, when we come to talk of performance, we'll look at when it comes to IT, the kind of things we should be measuring. And it's not only just the technical systems or the devices and their performance only, but even the human beings as well. We need to be getting data from even the people who are working. Because like we emphasized the last time, when it comes to cybersecurity issues, the human being is mostly the most vulnerable point, because people use weak passwords, or you save your passwords on your devices and people can take them and just log in and so on and so on. So we'll look at how we can be measuring performance, complying with the legal obligations or complying with the regulations and the laws is also one of the important things that IT governance enables you to achieve. Stakeholder confidence. I'm just going over this one because there are things we have talked about already. So there's no need. If you take the slides, you can read the details of what we're having in here. So, of course, when you are transparent, you are accountable, practices are ethical and so on, then your stakeholders, not only necessarily the shareholders, but even prospective customers, people have confidence in your operations. And that is a big issue, stakeholder confidence. You can imagine a bank, if customers lose confidence in a bank, you can imagine what will happen. The bank will collapse overnight. Or if they all come to take their money, then you'll be in trouble. So IT governance ensures that you maintain that stakeholder confidence, because they know that you are doing everything right and their data is protected. They are assured of the privacy and confidentiality of their data, and so on and so on. Then you have a lot of confidence in the stakeholders. And then the final one, of course, it gives you competitive advantage. I've already mentioned this. Those who are operating optimally always have a competitive advantage, especially in the technology era. Competitive advantage, it's simply just like we said, it simply means that it also comes down to the stakeholder confidence as well. The more confidence stakeholders have in you, then they are prepared to invest in you or patronize your products and so on and so on. And so you maintain competitive advantage, like how MTN is dominating the Ghana telco space now, because they have a lot of competitive advantage. You can't compete with them because the areas they operate are limited. What if you set up a telco now? What do you do? They started with only phone calls, and then they've added internet, and now banking or mobile money. And so and in each of them they have advantage. And for you to be able to compete, then maybe you need to introduce something totally new. But you never know. By the time you even introduce that, they have also introduced it as well. So anyway, and that is a demonstration of how when you are operating optimally, you can always maintain competitive advantage. The last thing before we end, but we're ending in about 10 minutes. I have another meeting at 1 o'clock. So yeah, so IT governance, we can always compare IT governance with other forms of governance, just like I said. There's enterprise governance, there's corporate governance, there's business governance, but all of them ride on IT in a way. Just like we said, IT permeates everywhere. And so IT governance, we'll come to talk about COBIT and those other frameworks. But there's a bit of a difference between the focus areas of these types of governance. So when we talk of enterprise governance, so let me go to the first one. An enterprise, there's a difference between an enterprise and then a corporation or a company. Not difference per se, but at least an enterprise is a much broader kind of system, whilst an organization or a corporate body is a form of an enterprise anyway. So a corporation is, yes, an enterprise, but focused on some specific areas. But enterprise can be broader. So you can always have an enterprise, and then a corporation, and then a business. When it comes to a business, we are focused on profits. So a business focuses on making money. When you make your money, then you can decide to be charitable by doing corporate, whatever it is. But mostly it's a business. We can have other organizations that are not necessarily business oriented, but you still have to operate in a way, else, because you have to sustain yourself one way or the other. You are not there to make profits, but you must be able to sustain yourself. And if you are not backed by government or whatever, and you have to be paying your workers and other things, then some level of business is there, but we normally don't call those ones businesses per se. And then so the definition of enterprise governance, it says a set of responsibilities and practices exercised by the board and executive management with the goal of providing strategic direction. That's always the key thing with the top management, strategic direction. So the board should be looking at not what is happening now, but where will your organization be in the next 5 or 10 years? That you have to have a vision, and then even have targets and KPIs, just like we said, that you can measure your progress towards that vision. And so the enterprise governance is normally for the people at the top who are looking at things more broadly. We have what we call conformance and performance. So by now, performance, I think I have some more details here. Conformance simply means you are doing things according to the rules and the standards that are in place. So you are conforming with all the recommended kind of rules and regulations. So when you say you are conforming with all the standards, you are ensuring that the system or product works as intended and complies with regulations. Performance is how well your system is achieving its goals. Now there's a slight difference. So you can be performing, but not conforming. Especially some of these Ponzi schemes. What is it? Gold, men's gold, and so on. So men's gold, when they started, it was really performing because people were getting their interest on a monthly basis. I mean, 100% interest every month, and it was performing, and people were patronizing it, and they were happy, and they were making their money. But he was not conforming, with the rules and the regulations. And so when the law finally caught up, everything ended. So you have to be focusing on both, not just performance only, but also conformance. So we say conformance is often backward looking. So we try to look at what we have done and whether we are conforming by the regulations. Performance is looking at how we can improve things as we move on, or how we are performing and how things can be improved and so on. So enterprise governance normally focuses on both these ones. Most, when it comes to the business level, we leave the enterprise aspect to those in charge, and then we focus on performance, how we can achieve our objectives, and so on. So there's enterprise governance, there is corporate governance, just like I said. So corporate is more or less a subset of enterprise. Not all enterprises can be considered as corporate bodies, but almost all corporate bodies are enterprises as well. So it's just an aspect of an enterprise. Sometimes people use them interchangeably. That's fine, but at least we need to have defined differences here and there. So we have enterprises. We can have an enterprise that is not necessarily, I mean, an individual can be enterprising and come up with something. You can say you want to do advocacy. I want to advocate for some human rights, and you have an enterprise. So you are just, but it's not necessarily, you can't call it a corporate or whatever. So there's corporate governance, which is more or less the same as enterprise governance, but more or less now restricted to just the organizational level. And the focus is always ensuring you operate ethically, accounts for all your actions to stakeholders, and so on and so on. And so there's always the board of directors and all those other ones. So we are trying to distinguish this from IT governance that just focuses on the IT aspect. So, and there's business governance. As I said, business governance is more or less focused on, there's a table here that gives the comparison. So corporate governance, here it says it's ex post facto. I mean, not post facto, ex post, in the sense that it is looking at conformance. And then business and IT governance are more or less looking at performance. So these these points just try to distinguish between the kind of things that we do when it comes to IT governance, comparing with business, and then the enterprise in itself. So they're just a way of situating IT governance in the overall business environment or the enterprise environment. So we are focusing on our IT objectives, alignment with enterprise, all the things we've talked about already. Our resources, strategy, acquisition, managing resources, and managing risk, and so on and so on. All those are, but all focused on IT. You can have risk management in other things. HR or human resources can be looking at risk management, but not, they are looking at employees, the kind of risk they are exposed to, and so on. But when it comes to IT governance, when we talk of risk, we are looking at the things that are related to IT or focused on IT. The last thing we're talking about, best practices. So what does it mean when we say best practices when it comes to IT governance? So we have a couple of them. The first one says make IT infrastructure essential to business strategy, which you've already talked about. IT infrastructure should be prioritized to help you maximize your existing resources, strengthen your digital transformation, and so on. The right team in place, that's always critical. You need the right people in the right places. For you to be able to achieve things, you always need the right people. And that's what people do, or these entrepreneurs do, and they're successful. Entrepreneurs mostly are not knowledgeable in most of the areas, but they're able to put the right people in the right places. You go to Google, how is Google performing the way it is performing? Those guys who started it, they were, in fact, they were still students anyway. And so Facebook and all those people, but they are able to put the right people in the right places. Most of the times when it comes to our part of the world, we are looking at your relationships and your uncle or your nephew, you employ them and give them a job. Meanwhile, they can't do anything. And at the end of the day, everything comes to a standstill or whatever. But for effective governance, you must have the right people in the right place. Monitor performance. We've already talked about that. Because if you don't measure something, you can't improve it. Then define roles and responsibilities. Roles must be clearly defined to avoid conflicts, so that it doesn't become, and to have accountability. When something happens, who is responsible for that? It shouldn't be that, oh, I thought this person was going to do this, or I thought, that's why I did this. Roles and responsibilities should be clearly defined. And of course, there's always that, hierarchical structures, reporting lines, and so on and so on. Then we go on to the compliance aspects. Ensure compliance. We can emphasize more on this, because if you don't comply, chances are that one day you'll be found wanting. And organizations have collapsed because of lack of or non-compliance. I just mentioned the men's gold thing. They had a lot of money, but still it collapsed because non-compliance. And then, of course, the risk management that we'll talk about. So these are some of the things when we talk of best practices. These are some of the things we should be doing. Apart from implementing the domains and all those things, there are a whole lot of other things that go into IT governance. So all along, what we've talked about is a whole lot when it comes to IT governance, and that's just the background of it. Also, this is what we've been talking about. So we looked at the concepts, the domains, the components. As I said, you need to always bear in mind what these terminologies actually mean, so that you don't mix them up. And then the relationship between IT governance, corporate governance, and so on. And then the best practices when it comes to implementation. So this is what introduction to IT governance means. So what have we learned? Have we met our objectives? What have I enjoyed? What is the most important thing I've learned today? Try to answer these questions. What have we learned today? So what I'm going to do is that I don't have time left, but okay, so next week we're going to be looking at frameworks and formats and so on. So after the first, I'm going to put a discussion forum here, and I'm going to ask people to contribute by answering those 4 ones. What have we learned today? Have we met our objectives? What have I enjoyed today? And what is the most important thing I've learned today? So we can ask people individually. So I'm going to put a forum. So if I come here, I'm going to Yeah. And this is because now I want to bring in the participatory and the people. I don't want the passive way of learning that we have been doing, just listening to Zoom and then you go away. No, I want us all to be contributing. So here, I'm bringing a forum. So, yeah, I'm going to call it our opinions after the first presentation. So, it's going to be the questions that I have here, and so that I can bring the picture. Or no, okay. Single simple discussion. So it says, so tell us. So the first one is, so I'm looking at I wanted to bring the picture, but there's no point. I'll just ask the questions. What have I learned today? So now I'm going to make it personal. One, what I have learned today. Two, whether the learning objectives have been met. And three, where is it? What you enjoyed today and what's the most important thing? It's the same as what you have learned today anyway. What's the most important thing I've learned today? Okay, so what is important I've learned today? And the last one is what you enjoyed. Not it, what I enjoyed today. Okay. The Now, so what I'm saying is that so post your response. You just hit the reply and you can post response. And also feel free comment on colleagues' responses. So I'll upload the slides anyway. So single discussion, all these ones. So just okay. So this is what. So when you come to the forum here, our opinions after the first presentation. Let me turn off this. So click on this, and then it says tell us this, and then so you just reply, and post your responses. Now I'm trying to enforce this, as I keep saying. And at the end of the day, I'm going to flip things in the sense that because just reading towards exam is no longer what I'm interested in. I'm going to flip things by making mid-semester and course participation 60%, and then the final exam 40%. So, and these are all part of the participation. But I'm going to make this 5 marks. So we're going to have some of these discussions. I'll call them discussions because you are free to respond to what other people are saying, or you can disagree with what others are saying. That's fine. But I want people to participate. I want people to contribute. And so that is going to carry some marks. So just hit the reply and type your reply. You can decide to type it, or you can open Notepad, type it, and then copy and paste. If you don't want to be live on the on the internet, you can just when you type in Notepad, right click and copy, or you can do Control V, and then just right click and paste. And so I have something here on risk management and so on. And then you just post. And like I said, you can also comment. This is supposed to be an academic exercise. So we've participated in a class today, and now we want to have opinions on moving forward. We're going to have some more of that subsequently, because I want people to be participating. Next week, I will introduce Socrative, and then we'll have some Socrative exercise. But there's no deadline for this, but you need to at least respond to this, because another one will be coming. So you can't let them be lining up. So we want to have some ideas. It's nothing technical or anything. It's just trying to make sure that at least people have learned something, and you can tell us what you have learned today and so on. All right. So that's your assignment for the week. A very simple assignment. Any comment or question? Yes.
So the date